All right, so I guess Toy Fair 2023 has come and gone, and in pursuing that precious content, thought I might as well give my thoughts on some of the pieces that were shown off here, and post some over the side, post some photos of things that are just. I'm gonna steal photos from toyark.com if you want to look at higher res versions of the photos. Whatever, I'll post a link down below here. They seem to have some of the best coverage of everything. So just going through, and we'll go in increasing importance to me, what I think's neat. So Super 7 reaction. I mean, I don't really collect reaction stuff, not because I don't appreciate them as interesting art pieces. Right, you have these very retro 5 point action figures with beautiful card art, things like that. Right, it's just I cannot justify the money for them. I'd love to get their whole Universal line. One of the things they showed off here are these Halloween kids, which are like, kids in costumes, right? You got Metaluna Mutant, Halloween Kid, Misfits, Halloween Kid, just, kids in costumes, right? Um, I'd love to get some of these and, just have them pinned up somewhere, but I can't justify like 22, $23 Canadian for them. Um, like that is too much, like for a figure that's supposed to stay on the card as a piece of art. Like I just can't justify that. These things, like $5, that's what these things are worth in terms of, like, if you can, comparable things you get from the dollar store, right? It's a cheap plastic, deliberately retro looking 5 point figure that's meant to be kept on the card, and I just can't justify $20 US or $25 Canadian for these things, as cool as they look. But those Halloween kids figures are pretty cute. Um, we'll grant that. These the weirdest. They're like these fun sort of little, actually very 80s things. It's like an evil Mayor McCheese, an evil Garbage Pail Kids. There's like this the vampire teeth with guitar. That's kind of cute. Like they're cute. They're cute. They're just not something I can justify the expense on as collector's items, right? As art pieces. Dungeons and Dragons, getting some more of like, and they're well articulated figures. I mean, Super 7 has really entered the market really well here with nicely articulated figures, and it looks like they've got a glow in the dark, um, one of their like ultimate sort of figures of the Metaluna Mutant, which is what I want from NECA actually. But their Metaluna Mutant figure looks fine, looks great. Um, it would be nice to get that maybe. Um, we'll see. I'm not seeing the price of that one though. They didn't grab a photo of that. Let's see. Yeah, no, they managed to not. So one thing they didn't grab a photo of was the price of the Metaluna Mutant figure. But Super 7's Metaluna Mutant, more reaction, Universal Monster reaction figures, aligned based on the Luminator models, which back in the day, the Luminators, those were the Aurora model kits, the original Aurora model kits. The molds had passed down to like other companies since Aurora went under, and one company, I forget which one, but they decided to recast them all, but in like translucent glow in the dark plastic. So they're like these clear neon colored versions of the monsters. And I actually had the Dracula model kit of that, not knowing when I was a kid what that represented. Wish I still had it now that I know what it is. Um, but yeah, they're doing these variants. They do have these reaction figures. They're now doing Luminators variants of them, which is fun and cute, but again, not what I would be willing to invest that kind of money in. But they also have like Ben Cooper costume ones, the uh, the world famous Creature from the Black Lagoon variant there. Again, great variants and stuff. It's just, again, I can't justify the money for figures that are supposed to stay on card that are only 5 point of articulation. So, I mean, Super 7, cool stuff. I just wish I could actually justify paying that kind of money for it, right? Next here, Just looking down the list here, Four Horsemen Figura Obscura line is actually really cool. Um, I mean, these have sort of been out, and some of these are pre-sold out as it is. But like their Hunchback, or not Hunchback, sorry, their Headless Horseman figure is fantastic. And pre-sold out already, but I wish I could get their Headless Horseman. I think looks fantastic and looks like spot on. It fit in really well with the Universal monster figures. If you get over the sort of mental hump, that's like, well, that's not Universal though. But as far as like old monsters go, their Santa Claus figure looks great. Their Krampus figure looks great. They've got a Sun Wukong figure. So if you go back and buried in my playlist is my review of the League of Legends Wukong figure, which I only picked up because it's Sun Wukong, the figure, excuse me, the character from Chinese mythology, the Journey to the West. Um, well, now the Four Horsemen have their version of it, which is great. Um, the Mask of Red Death looks awesome as well. That'd be another one that I would love very much to pick up as part, fit him in there with the Universal monster figures. I think it would look fantastic. Um, would love to get all these figures. I mean, Four Horsemen stuff is great. Four Horsemen at least came to my attention when they redesigned He-Man, the 2000X He-Man series, which is still my favorite version of He-Man, even though I grew up with He-Man originally in the 80s. Right, so I remember the old Mattel figures and had some of them, and watched the old Filmation cartoon. But the 2000X version, with the toys designed by the Four Horsemen and the way better animation and the way better storyline in the cartoon, is actually my favorite version of He-Man still. I wish, in a fit of I go through these fits of purges every now and then, where I'm just like, I have too much stuff, I've accumulated too much stuff, too many collections, I just want to get rid of it. And I had the Four Horsemen, He-Man and Skeletor figures. In fact, the He-Man with the Iron Cross as well, not the like weird H logo, but the actual Iron Cross. Um, and then I gave them to some friends of mine in a purge. Like, I got to get rid of this stuff. That's my childhood. That's old stuff. I want to craft my surroundings. Which, when you live in a studio apartment, is something to think about. I wish I didn't do that though. I wish I had kept those figures because they are great figures and they're like, in my opinion, they're like the best He-Man and Skeletor sculpts ever done. So anything by Four Horsemen, I would be enthusiastic about and would be totally happy to add to my collection. And some of these the medieval figures of knights and skeletons and armor and stuff like that, I would love to be able to add those to my collection. I think those would also look great with Universal Monsters diorama of just general sort of old school kind of horror figures. Right? I'm not, again, slasher movies and torture and stuff is not my thing. But the uh, um, like more classical sort of horror, right? So skeleton in a suit of armor is perfect, even as a diorama piece to be in the dungeon with the Universal monsters or something like that. Um, so I wish I look forward to seeing these. I mean, I'd hope I can afford them. um, my top of the line is sort of about $60, $70, maybe is pushing it. That's about what I paid for my King Kong figures, my Mezco and NECA King Kong figures, and that's about what tops it out of what I can justify paying. So when it starts getting to like $100 or more, then it's like, can't do that. But if I can find these Four Horsemen figures for something affordable, um, that would be fantastic. I would love that. Trick or Treat Studios entering into the action figure market as well, which is good for them. You know, I mean they've started with producing masks, Halloween costumes, that sort of thing, and now venturing into more like collectibles and now action figures as well. So Goosebumps action figures. I don't have that attachment to Goosebumps. That's after my time, but they look pretty good. Um, their Sam character, House of Thousand Corpses, not my thing. Um, some Hammer horror figures, so Dracula and the Frankenstein monster, and then it's into slasher, so Halloween and um, that sort of thing. Gwar as well, which is good for them. Return of the Living Dead. Yeah. The rest of it's just like, um, most of it is stuff that, oh, actually, I didn't see this one. Oh, a Shock Monster figure. Okay, that one's coming home with me. So, for the store, actually, one of the things I got from Trick or Treat Studios, because I do get stuff from them for my store, one of the things I got from them, in fact, the only mask I brought in from them is the Shock Monster, which is the Mabry Monsters remake of the Shock Monster mask. So, Shock Monster mask was one that was originally sold in Famous Monsters of Filmland. It's a classic icon. It's this sort of zombie-looking creature with one like big eye. Why am I describing it? I can just put the picture right here. Um, and anyways, so I believe it's Justin Mabry. I forget his full name. I apologize if I got the wrong first name. But Trick or Treat Studios um, has remade that mask far better than the original mask ever looked. The original mask was just like a piece of mail away trash from the 60s. But they've remade it into this just like gorgeous sculpt that looks wonderfully disturbing. And I love it. It's great. I brought in a couple of those to sell as collector's items, right? I don't really sell like Halloween costumes at my store, but I do sell that mask as like a collector's item for people who know what the Shock Monster is. And I have sold one as well. So it's not. There's at least one person out there, Colin, who knows what the Shock Monster is. Um, so now I see that they're doing an action figure of the Shock Monster. So that is absolutely 100% coming home with me. Even if that goes over my like $60-$70 Canadian limit, I'm totally getting that one. That is awesome. I didn't see that one before, even when cause I have looked at these before, but I'll give my give my opinions on them. Um, Now, but I didn't see that one before. Scared to Death. Oh, that's an interesting one as well. That looks like a 5 point figure. Um, and I don't mind the 5 point thing, right? Like I have my Godzilla 5 point XL. They're great. I love them. Um, it's just the like, oh, the 5 point so retro, and we're selling them as collector's pieces, so they cost $25 Canadian. It's like no, like there's no reason why those figures should cost that much. Um, I got Hasbro's 5 point Ghostbusters figures, and I got them for like $10 each. So that's a decent price. I'll pay that price. But yeah, that Shock Monster figure, I want to get that. Definitely for the same reason I brought in the masks to my store. And there's Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. All that sort of stuff. Toxic Avenger, I guess that's becoming a thing again. I saw a movie trailer for a remake of Toxic Avenger or something like that. So I guess that's in the list of things that are getting to the bottom of the basement. We got that going on. So Trick or Treat Studios, that's something I definitely want to get in there. Mondo is just doing their thing. Yeah, He-Man, or not Transformers, sorry, X-Men, Batman. Ooh, that's a good looking Man Thing figure. If you're into Man Thing. um, yeah, then just it's all He-Man, which is fine. NECA, that's the big one. That's the big one to talk about. Actually, oh, sorry, Super 7, another Super 7 thing, Godzilla. Um, yeah, they've got the reaction Godzilla figures, which are fine. I prefer the Mezco 5 point XL figures because they're just more beautifully sculpted. Um, yeah, it's that creature from the Black Lagoon, full color, like pull away figure, like you see his anatomy. $125 US for that one. Um, it's nice though. I mean, it looks cool. I will totally grant that. But those sort of anatomy figures are interesting, and some of their higher end Godzilla figures, which are okay. They're mostly Heisei figures though, um, so that's not really my thing. My jam is more Showa era. Um, so yeah, and the reaction figures, which is the same problem. Again, just they're too expensive for what they are for me to justify it. So I'm gonna stick with the Mezco sets for that. Which I did not see a Mezco thing here for the Toy Fair. I'm not sure what's going on with Mezco. Are they still around? I don't know. um, but I really hope that if Mezco is still around, that they do make more of the 5 point XL Godzilla sets. Because their Destroy All Monsters, two sets of those are great. The versus Hedorah set is great, and the versus Mechagodzilla that has Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, and King Caesar in it. That's still supposed to be coming out this month, hopefully. Um, that's they're all great, and we need at least um, the Godzilla versus Megalon, because then you get Godzilla, Megalon, Anguirus. No, sorry, Jet Jaguar, and Gigan, right? So there's three of those figures have not been made yet by Mezco. So yeah, Godzilla, Megalon, Jet Jaguar, and Gigan. I would love to see that set at least. I could also do for versus Ebera would be a good set, because then you can reuse the Godzilla mold, you can reuse the Mothra mold for the people who missed their Mothra they've already made, and you get Ebera as well. Would be great. And then I mean I also love King Kong Escape set, but that's bound up in the whole copyright stuff with King Kong, and that's a dog's breakfast. Um, but NECA, that's the one that I really am interested in with what's going on with NECA, and also what isn't going on with NECA, which is a bit strange in my opinion. So the first thing that NECA has done here that I find absolutely delightful is these Ben Cooper figures. So they've made like these figures of like children in the old Ben Cooper Halloween costumes. So Ben Cooper was the company that started the whole, you have the vacuform mask and then the smock with the character on it. That's Ben Cooper that started that. And so you have these figures here, the Ben Cooper mummy, skeleton, creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein monster, and a devil. I will probably pass on the devil because that's not really my jam, being a religious man. But the other four figures are absolutely fantastic. There's perfect little kids, little smocks, the little vacuform masks. That made me chuckle when I first saw it, and it is continuing to make me chuckle. And I very much looking forward to making little dioramas with these figures, meeting the big NECA figure of the actual monster. This is going to be great. I love, again, this is that retro 60s monster kid, um, sort of just retro kitsch thing, mid-century thing, and so I love it. These are hilarious. The next best thing to owning the actual Ben Cooper costumes themselves is owning toys wearing the costumes. So these Ben Cooper figures are like top on my list of things to get coming out of Toy Fair here. Love the Ben Cooper figures. These are great. And then they've also unveiled um, this Vincent Price figure, Vincent Price Ultimates figure. So this is a Vincent Price figure that is scaled for the Universal Monsters, which is just mwah, perfect. And I love the fact that Vincent Price figures are just Vincent Price. Like Reaction is also making a Vincent, like Super 7 Reaction is also making a Vincent Price figure, and it's just Vincent Price. And now NECA is also doing a Vincent Price figure that is just Vincent Price. And he's the suit. I'm not sure if that suit is a remold, if it's a wholly new sculpt, or if that's a slightly retooling of the Invisible Man outfit, the Invisible Man figure. But you've got Vincent. He comes with a raven, a black cat, and a skull, which are all perfect accessories. And he's got kind of a wan face, just it's Vincent Price, a face with more of that sardonic sneer with his raised eyebrows, and then an older face as well. If you want to go with, if you're like me, you grew up in the 80s or 90s, then you would remember Vincent Price as a much older man. Um, so you can do that as well, or you can have his younger sort of look. But the fact you can have, you gotta have Vincent Price there with the Universal monsters, hanging out with Dracula and the Invisible Man and stuff, is just mwah, perfection. I love it. I love it. Vincent Price is also at the top of my list. Um, so I saved the NECA for the last because the NECA is the stuff that I'm most excited about. So the Ben Cooper costumes and the Vincent Price figure are just spectacular. Love them. There's also, they're venturing now into Hammer as well, so you can get Christopher Lee Dracula figure if you are into the Hammer horror. Um, which is fine if you are. I haven't caught the bug yet. Granted, I have not really sat down and watched horror films, but I'm more, in the post Universal Monsters milieu. I'm more interested in like AIP and Vincent Price and the Poe films, which I'm going to be doing a video about here shortly. Not so much the Hammer horror, which to me is just regurgitating Universal Monsters. But if you're into it, fine, great, perfect. NECA has also finally got a model of the London After Midnight figure, which they've published it before. We knew it was coming out, but now I'm actually seeing photos of it, and it looks good. It's kind of a weird choice, maybe, I don't know, because it's like, okay, they've got Nosferatu, which looks great and is like the most iconic silent movie monster that you could do a figure of. Got it. Phantom of the Opera is part of the Universal line. That's all, but it's also a silent movie monster, right? But then you have Professor Burke from London After Midnight. And London After Midnight is like the most famous lost movie, right? Everyone wants to see it, nobody has. And chances are, if we ever did, it's not going to be as good as everybody thinks it's going to be. We do have a remake in the form of Mark of the Vampire with Bela Lugosi, which is a great movie. It's, in my opinion, one of the best of the non-Universal, Universal-style movies, right? So Universal-style movies from the 30s, not made by Universal. So the Frederick March, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Mark of the Vampire, Island of Lost Souls, and King Kong are like the 4 best non-Universal horror movies from the 30s. So on the one hand, I get them doing this figure because it's like, well, it's another very iconic, very famous silent movie horror character. But it's also like nobody's seen the movie, right? It's a lost movie. It's purely the legend and the iconography of the character himself. But you have to raise the question then, okay, so if they're going to do more silent movie figures, what would they do instead of London After Midnight? Well, I mean, Cesare from the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari would be the next most obvious one, right? Conrad Veidt. And after that, it's like, okay, Quasimodo, Lon Chaney, Quasimodo, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Conrad Veidt's Man Who Laughs. But those are also under the Universal line, which I'd love for them to do. After that, it's like, I don't know, like who can name off the top, like the Golem, I guess, like Der Golem. The Thomas Edison Frankenstein, I guess, would be another worthwhile figure. But after that, you start to get into like little slightly more obscure things. Like, yeah, I mean, I would love a figure of Siegfried and Fafnir, but the chance of that ever happening is probably pretty slim. With Siegfried from Die Nibelungen. So yeah, I guess. Oh yeah, and Maria from the robot from Metropolis would be like the other obvious one, right? What I find a little bit appalling, not unexpected, but a little bit appalling, is no more Universal monster announcements, other than variants of the figures, like, oh, it's the glow in the dark creature or whatever. But there's no more Universal monster announcements, which I was expecting. I was kind of expecting that once they wrapped up the Magnificent 7+1, so Dracula, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Invisible Man, Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and the Mummy. The Magnificent 7, and then the +1 is the Phantom. They've also got a Bride version of the Frankenstein monster. So, the makeup is different between the two movies. So they do have a version of the Frankenstein monster from Bride of Frankenstein. He comes with the chair when he's been captured. So they're not above doing these variations of figures they've already done. But I kind of figured after they were done with the creature that they probably wouldn't do any more of the Universal monsters, which is a pity because I would love to see more of the monsters. My personal wish list, I've mentioned this a couple times, but my personal wish list is a 3-pack of Abbott, Costello, and the Glenn Strange version of the Frankenstein monster. The Man Who Laughs, Hunchback of Notre Dame, although I would also accept the Charles Laughton version, which is not Universal, it's RKO, but either the Lon Chaney Sr. or the Charles Laughton version of the Hunchback, I would love to have as a figure. Dracula's Daughter, the Metaluna Mutant, and Werewolf of London, Igor, so Bela Lugosi's Igor, and Dr. Pretorius would be figures I would love to have. Also, um, ostensibly a Van Helsing figure, but what you would do is, Edward Van Sloan, Van Helsing, but he comes with the proper heads and accessories. So you could also make him Dr. Waldman or Dr. Mueller. So his characters, which is a virtually identical character from Frankenstein, or The Mummy as well. So you could have just Edward Van Sloan, an Edward Van Sloan figure. And ideally, in my magical perfect world, Dwight Fry Renfield figure as well would all be great figures to have in the Universal line. I would love to have them. I don't expect them. I think I highly expect that NECA is done now that they've done the Magnificent 7+1. But hope springs eternal, right? You never know um, if they ever happen and if they ever come up to Canada, because I still actually, as of this recording, still have not found the Phantom of the Opera or the Creature of the Black Lagoon figures, even though they've started to spread across the United States. Because NECA hates Canada and doesn't release the stuff up here. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But also from NECA for non-universal figures, again, Lawton, Hunchback, I would love to see. There's lots of figures you could do from Island of Lost Souls, but the Lawgiver is probably the best one because that's the Bela Lugosi Animal Man, and the Frederick March Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I think would be great figures to throw in there. Would blend very well with the Universal Monster line. And another one that I want is Vampira. So NECA has this deal worked out with Elvira. They've made a couple of Elvira figures now. There's a Christmas variation of her in a Santa outfit that they've been doing, and there's like the Toonie Terrors version, so the more cartoony looking little statuettes. They've got one of Elvira's lounging on her couch, as she is wont to do. They're coming up with a Vincent Price Toonie Terrors figure. Wednesday, Toonie Terrors, Jessica Fletcher from Murder She Wrote, which is hilarious. And Vincent Price Toonie Terror, which is also great. And they have a Vampira Toonie Terror. I want to get that because I love Vampira. And I try to make Vampira a thing at my store. Like, I carry a lot of Vampira merchandise at my store. Because Creepsville, they have a range of Vampira merchandise. And I love Vampira. I think she is great. I mean, Elvira is the horror hostess I grew up with. And you know, discover your young male libido with. But now that I'm into more of the mid-century and the classic stuff, like Vampira, she was absolutely stunning. A little bit of a weirdo, personality-wise, from interviews that I've watched with her, but she's absolutely gorgeous and just iconic. And she's in one of my favorite movies, Plan 9, right? So they have the Vampira Toonie Terrors figure. I want desperately for NECA to make a Vampira figure in their larger scale cloth line. So that's what they did Elvira in, larger scale. So she's like an inch taller than the Universal figures, which isn't that big of a deal because a lot of it is just her beehive. So it's not as like OMG, you can really notice that she's like taller than the Frankenstein monster. It's not that bad. But it's fair enough. If they have Elvira, they should have Vampira as well. I would love and die and like pre-order and mail away whatever to get a Vampira figure to match that Elvira figure. They can have a cat fight on the shelf or whatever. But yeah, I guess a lot of my toy review here, my Toy Fair review, has turned into things I wish NECA was making, as opposed to the things that they are making. But again, the Ben Cooper figures and the Vincent Price figure are like top of my list. I want those. Those I need to get those. And then what else I can find, I will find. In terms of like the Vampira Toonie Terrors and stuff like that. They also have a Svengoolie tiny or Toonie Terror as well. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, the stuff I'm most excited about is the NECA Ben Cooper costumes and the Vincent Price figure. The rest looks all right. You know, if I can get those Four Horsemen figures like the Mask of Red Death and the Headless Horseman for within my price range, um, then I would certainly consider it. But yeah, that seems to be what we've got here coming out of Toy Fair. So thanks again to Toy Arc. Not that I asked, but you know, thanks for letting me steal your photos and use those. And yeah, I guess reviews down the line as these figures get released and come out, and I'm able to get my hands on them.